I think if I just circle back to what I first said, this is such an important conversation because I always say to everyone, your health is your ultimate wealth. Without it, you have nothing. And oftentimes, it's not until you go through major health crises that you realize the extent of what that even means.
Welcome to The Happy Nurse, the podcast that encourages nurses to offer themselves the same compassion that they so freely give to others. I am Elaina, a registered nurse on a mission to reduce burnout in nursing. Let's jump in. Hello, I'm back. I just wanted to jump on prior to you listening to this episode and just frame it up a bit for you, I suppose. In this episode, I am chatting to my very dear friend Michelle, who, if you've listened to the podcast before, you will have heard us chatting, and our chats go off on all sorts of cool tangents. In this episode, I'm unpacking with Michelle why I have been absent for the last couple of years and where I just suddenly disappeared to. So I had quite a serious health challenge, and it's taken me a few years to get over it. And that's where I've been, and I've been practicing what I preach. And yeah, it's been all about the self-care for me and the mindset work and practicing the mindfulness that I preach about so often. But it was also in the episode we unpacked the impact that this had not only on me, but on my family as well and those around me. I know I'm not the only nurse living with a chronic health condition, and I have found it hard to be the patient rather than the nurse, but it's been very insightful in that respect. At the end of the day, I'm a human, and sometimes as humans we need support, and I think it's important for us as nurses to remember that. This episode was recorded at the end of June. I've struggled a bit with publishing it. I'm just going to give you full disclosure because it felt very self-indulgent. And it's taken me until now to kind of process that and realize that it's not self-indulgent. It's important that I share this for transparency, for authenticity. And yeah, just that genuine recognition that we are humans before we are nurses and before we're healthcare professionals. Fundamentally, we are human beings and we deserve the same support that we give our patients. And that comes in the form of self-care and self-compassion. So I'm not going to give you too many more spoilers. I am going to disappear now and you can jump into the episode and enjoy. But it's great to be back and I've got lots of exciting things lined up for you all. Hi everyone, guess who's back? Yes, it's me, Elaina. I have decided to come out of my hibernation and I am back. And I am so excited to be back hosting the Happy Nurse podcast. I have missed you all dearly. But yeah, here goes another season. I can't promise how long it'll be, where we're going to go. As always, I'm just following the flow. It's going to be a completely organic process. But I'm very passionate about promoting well-being to all my lovely nursing colleagues out there. So I am back in the studio. And today I am very excited to have my good friend and serial guest, Michelle, with me. Those of you who have heard the podcast before will have listened to Michelle and I's chats. They go off anywhere and everywhere, but they're always full of valuable content. So I thought, who better to restart the next season with than Michelle? So, Michelle, in case any of you listening have not heard Michelle and I chat before, Michelle is a holistic health and well-being coach. She has over 20 years of experience helping people reconnect with their bodies, calm their minds, and create lives that truly reflect who they are. Michelle's also the best-selling author of The Mastery of Wellness, a book that empowers readers to approach health with nurture, context, and care, not fear or quick fixes. Clients describe Michelle as no fluff, real deal. She creates a non judgmental space where people feel safe to be seen, supported, and gently challenged. Her coaching program blends clinical knowledge with holistic principles and practical tools, supporting mental, emotional, and physical well-being from the ground up.
Once again, as always, excited to see where we end up taking our conversations today.
Yeah, they're always fun. We don't plan these conversations. We have a brief outline of what we're going to talk about, and then we just let it roll. So we were just chatting before we started recording. We're like, what we're going to talk about? Because neither of us had planned this. I was just like, right, you can be my first guest cup. So here we are. Um, I was thinking I would probably share with you all where I've been, why I've been able. Um, to be completely honest, I've been practicing what I preach. I had to press pause. I had to stop. I had to reprioritize. My health took a hit. And I've been very quiet about it. Those who are close to me know about it, but I decided not to share it publicly whilst I was going through it all because it was quite challenging and tricky. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called mast cell activation syndrome. Now, even a lot of nurses don't know what that is. But what it boils down to is I have a lot of allergies now. I experienced 8 anaphylaxis in the space of 12 months, which was very distressing for me and for my family. That was back in 2022. So that's kind of why the podcast just kind of disappeared for a while. After having all those anaphylaxis, I went on pretty much an elimination diet and went really low histamine because there was so much histamine in my body. And over the past couple of years, I have slowly reintegrated things back into my diet. And I'm now back eating a pretty balanced diet, I would say. I've even given up the vegetarianism and I'm enjoying a steak at least once a week now, which I'm actually loving. And I've had a couple of bacon sandwiches recently too. So, yeah, I'm back. My health is much better than it was. I still rely heavily on antihistamines every day, but I have only had one anaphylaxis in the last 2 years. And that was I think, to a crustacean that I hadn't realised was in a curry sauce, which I've always had anaphylaxis to anyway. The others were all just very, very random and I didn't see them coming, but they happened. And yeah, I just had to deal with it. But I haven't let it stop me living my life. You know, those of you who follow me, you'll see I've recently been to a remote island and off of Bali. I've been there quite a few times over the last few years. I had to really look at my lifestyle as well and try and take a lot of stress out of it and reprioritize me and my self-care. And I also had to be there for my kids, especially my youngest one, because it caused him a lot of distress seeing me so unwell. So, yeah, that's where I've been. I've been practicing what I preach, but now I'm back. I'm happy, I'm healthy, and I'm excited to be back with you all. But during all of this as well, I don't know if any of you saw the post on my Facebook community the other day. I turned 45 on Wednesday, and I was also recently diagnosed with early menopause. So I have been going through this without realizing what's happening for the last probably 10 years, to be honest. But now I'm out the other side and I look back and I think, oh my goodness, like now I know what it looks like. I can see what was happening, but at the time I had no idea what was going on. So yeah, it's been a real journey. But I think, nursing's 90% females. And there's a lot of chat out there at the moment about perimenopause, and it's finally getting the voice that it deserves because it's a huge transition in a woman's life and we go through so many changes. So I really wanted to address this. And Michelle coaches a lot of women who are in this stage of life and is a wealth of knowledge on the area. So I thought it'd probably be a really good idea to have a chat with her about it because she's been on this journey with me. She has been the voice of reason at times on the end of the phone when I've been having a freak out. She's heard the tears. Yeah, so Michelle, jump in and yeah, I'm going to hand the mic over to you
I
because
think
I've
this
spoken
is
enough.
a really important conversation to be having, especially when you're working in a wellness profession as nurses are. I think sometimes there's an expectation just to keep going regardless of whatever health problems, issues they're experiencing, and just to that push on through. And likewise with perimenopause. So I think it's really powerful with you sharing your health journey that you've been on these last few years. And I know that nurses listening will understand the magnitude of anaphylaxis, whereas I don't think the average person does. The complexities that come with it and the genuine fear around that as well. And then throw on top perimenopause throughout this whole process. It's like a melting pot of all sorts of fun things for us to dissect. But I think if I just circle back to what I first said, this is such an important conversation because I always say to everyone, your health is your ultimate wealth. Without it, you have nothing. And oftentimes, it's not until you go through major health crises that you realize the extent of what that even means. And then, coupled with being a female and going through all of the natural but tricky changes that we experience during perimenopause, it's such an imperative conversation to have because we need to be talking about these things with one another so that way we can talk about it with our partner, our children, our friends, because we need support through all of this.
Yeah, most definitely. And what you just said there just rang so true for me. Your health is your wealth. Like, I kind of taken my health for granted. Um, like you said, I'm a nurse. I kept pushing through and I thought, I'll be right. Everything's okay. I'm not as sick as some of the patients that I'm looking after. And then when I was having anaphylaxis, it was a real kind of, oh shit moment because I was a ticking time bomb. I didn't know when it was going to happen. It happened at work once and they had to ship me off in an ambulance. It happened at home quite a few times as well.
I remember being
Um,
on the phone with you
yeah,
while we were waiting for an ambulance to arrive.
yeah, and that's another concern, and I know ambulances all over Australia are doing everything they can, but I waited up to 35 minutes sometimes post EpiPen, which, yeah, it's frightening. It was a real insight into what's happening for the patient because obviously I'm a nurse, I've got my clinical head. But when I was in that state of, my body was starting to shut down, I no longer had that clinical judgment. I was on the other side of the bed. Relieved. I'm going to give a big shout out to Joondalup Health Campus Emergency Department because they have been incredible. All the staff in there have looked after me amazingly, been so professional and compassionate and empathic. Um, and I'm really, really grateful for everything they've done for me back in 2022 because I think my notes just got thicker and thicker and thicker. I became one of these frequent flyer patients, which nobody wants to be. But I was like, I'm back again. And yeah, Like I was bamboozling them because we couldn't work out what sometimes had triggered this
I think it was
anaphylaxis.
a and yes, we can laugh that you're a frequent flyer, but I know how scary that was for you, not only to be needing to use EpiPens and going to ED so frequently, but then also the aftermath of having those EpiPens and how that would mess with your system as well. And then the constant concern of it wasn't identifiable what exactly triggered it. So you didn't know what to watch out for. What are we looking for? What do I need to stay away from? And I think, you know, how many listeners out there are navigating some sort of, whether it's an allergy, intolerance, it might not be to the extremes of anaphylaxis, but are trying to figure shit out and don't know what the hell is triggering them.
Yeah, it's really frightening. And I mean, I remember one of my episodes was days before I was due to fly home to see my dad. I hadn't seen him for 3 years because of COVID and the lockdowns and not being able to leave Australia. And I was so excited. I was going to go home. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. And I had an anaphylaxis just days before. And I was like, oh my God, what is going to happen now? And I had to get clearance from my immunologist to fly. And I look back now and he said, yeah, just don't go anywhere remote. My dad lives in the Highlands of Scotland. Like, the nearest hospital is 40 miles away. You know, it's a good 45 minutes in the car. There is an ambulance in the local village, but my poor dad, I arrived home and I was just broken because obviously on the flight, I had been terrified to eat anything because the last thing I want to do is have an anaphylaxis 35,000 feet in the air. I left with 5 EpiPens. I had prednisolone. I had Ventolin. I had like 2 different kinds of antihistamines. And I'd made my own banana bread and I took that with me on the plane and that was all I ate. The cabin crew kept coming up going, "Do you want something to eat, Miss McDonald?" And I'm like, "No, I can't. I could have an anaphylaxis." So I literally survived on water and banana bread until I got to Edinburgh. And then, yeah, Dad kind of looked after me from then. But it was it was really frightening. And I have flown that route twice since. And it's now just I have to pack the 5 EpiPens. I've got to make sure I've got prednisone, I've got the Ventolin. And it's been a real insight because airlines don't carry EpiPens. And I did not know this until I was faced with the situation that I had to carry one. It's not an issue taking it on the plane or anything, but I had presumed that they would have one on board. They don't. So if you take anything away from this podcast, take that away. If you're ever flying with someone who needs an EpiPen, don't rely on the
Mm.
airline having one.
And I think too, if we circle back to the fear around what you were going through for a moment, because it wasn't just your fear. And I think this is important for all of the mums listening, because you and I had so many conversations with how your boys were reacting and responding to watching their mother go through this. And in particular, your youngest son, he really struggled emotionally and was quite terrified of what could happen to you. I feel like that could be something that might resonate to share with whatever you feel comfortable with, Elaina.
Yeah, it was really tough on the kids. Um, it really impacted him and it caused him to have separation anxiety to the point that he was having to email me from school just to get reassurance that I was okay. If there's ever any time that I would be late to pick him up from school or, just anything, he would instantly panic and think, Mum's not well, she's in the hospital again. So, yeah, the impact it had on them was huge. And that's another reason I've taken some time out, while I've healed myself. Um, I've spent a lot of time with the kids, just um, reconnecting with them, just letting them know that I'm okay, that they're okay, that we've got people around us who care about us and love us. And um, yeah, just I've been enjoying spending time with them because I've realized, life's precious. I've always known that because of what happened to me when I was 18 and I lost my mum suddenly in a road traffic accident. But um, my eldest son's turning 17 in a couple of weeks. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, where has the time gone? He's he's in year 11 now. He's thinking about his future. He's planning a big trip with his mates next year when they finish school because he'll be 18 then. And yeah, suddenly my baby he's nearly a man. He's taller than me. He's got a beard. He's got long hair. I'm so proud of them both.
And I think that's important because oftentimes, and those listening would know it from a nursing perspective, that it's not just the patient that's going through something, but it's those around them that's having, whether it's vicarious trauma or whatever else is coming up in them, being a carer or just being related, like your son watching his mother go through something horrendous that he can't do anything about. And so I think some people forget how long it can take to work through your health and get back into homeostasis, because I'm sure there's some people listening going, geez, that's a long time ago. And yet it's not really, in the context of how slow and steady the body is with healing. Yes, it can heal miraculously, but oftentimes we think we're supposed to fit into these 12-week programs or within certain time frames to be able to heal from health conditions, and that's 9 times out of 10 not at all the reality that we face when we're trying to heal this. And you're living proof of that, Elaina, that slow and steady wins the race. And yes, you're facing more obstacles coming up with your health, but with everything you've gone through, it's changed your view on the world, it's changed your view on health, and also how you look after your physical, nutritional, and just health in general.
Yeah, it's been a huge kind of fork in the road for me. Whilst all this has been going on, I have still been studying. So I'm now doing my postgrad in psychology. And I'm just realizing more and more the power of that mind body connection. It's so powerful. And I am, it amazes me actually sometimes as well how powerful that mind body connection is. Because the way we look at things, it really, really does have an impact. And I know I sound a bit woo woo now, and I'm a registered nurse as well, but I read that after my like eighth anaphylaxis, and I think that was the one when I was about to fly to Scotland, I read, I'm looking for the book on the shelf, Anita Morjani's book, Dying to Be Me. That really turned things around for me because I realized that I was always in fear of having this anaphylaxis and the power it had over me. And I realized I did have an element of control. I had to do what I could do to try and prevent this from happening. So that's when I went on the elimination diet and really got the histamine down in my body again. The one thing that's come out of this that I'm going to tell you all is I haven't drank alcohol for 3.5 years. Um, so yeah, I can't have alcohol anymore. That's gone. But I did miss it initially, I must admit. Now I don't. After about a year, it's like, no, and I'm quite happy now socializing, going out. I never have that craving for a drink. The other thing I had to give up initially was chocolate. Now that was torture. That really, really was torture. But I can now eat chocolate again, so it's good. I was on this low histamine diet. I didn't even know there was such a thing until this happened to me. The rule of thumb with histamine is, and I'm no expert, but this is how I deduced it to myself, the older the food is, the higher the histamine content. So I had to eat fresh, home cooked food no processed stuff. And I was literally surviving on like potatoes, coleslaw, falafel. That was about it. I'm a big fan of spinach and tomatoes. They're high in histamine, I didn't realize. So I had to cut them out too. Avocado, I couldn't have that. That's high in histamine as well. My diet completely changed. But I've now slowly integrated things back in. And there's still food groups I can't have. I can't have fresh dairy. And I'm alive. And I'm lucky it's happened to me when it has, because there's so many dairy-free options out there. Yeah, I still have a cheeky ice cream once in a while because I can get the dairy-free.
Dietary protocols and elimination diets and, healing and sealing your gut lining. And, there was a lot of work that goes into that. And we're not saying in any stretch of the imagination that if you're someone that's suffering like Elaina has, you don't necessarily need to follow that plan. But that's the levels and extent that Elaina needed to go through for it. And there is a huge component of making sure we've got that good nutritional health. And like I said, so imperative with healing and sealing the gut. And anything that you need to do dietary wise to help you with that, we highly recommend you get trained support with that, because it's so confusing nowadays as to what to follow and what to do. And we want to do things that are specific for each person. And so that was a huge component of it. And like you said, that mental work and the books and the conversations and the self work to get your mindset in the right place, so to speak. So that way it was supporting you rather than constantly living in fear, which is quite a normal thing when you're going through the magnitude of what you were experiencing. And then thrown on top of it, that perimenopause thing, which I want to point out because I don't think it's spoken about enough. We think that just because we're in our 40s that it's just quote unquote normal, but common doesn't mean normal. And in actual fact, they state from a holistic health standpoint that perimenopause actually begins in your mid 30s and goes right up to, oftentimes your 50s. So I don't believe there's an early or a late with going through that. But the thing is, because it's not spoken about enough, the different symptoms we can all be having, and so many things can be put down to, oh, it could be XYZ instead.
The other thing that I've probably haven't spoken about much, I don't know if I've mentioned it to you, Michelle. I think I have. But I realized as well is that I felt very isolated, like before all this happened as well. Being a single mom, I was working all the time, not having any family here. I struggled sometimes to connect with people. And now there's been all this research coming out recently, and especially this 80-year-long study from Harvard on happiness. They're recognizing that the one key to longevity from this study from Harvard that's been going on since the early 40s, it started during the war, and it's predicting why people live a long and happy life. And they're saying it's the quality of your relationships, especially at the age of 50. We need to have community around us. We're tribal creatures. We can't live alone in isolation. And that was something else that I've really made a big effort to change in my life. And it's made a big impact knowing that I have got that people around me to support me. Michelle's there is one of them. She may be on the other side of the country, but I know she's always on the other side of the phone. And I have a few very good friends here in Perth that I know I can pick up the phone and call if things are happening, and they're all going to be there for me when I have my surgery as well. So that importance of having that community, because we've lost that. We live in this digital era now. I'm one of these that they call a zennial. It's like I'm not Gen X and I'm not a millennial. I'm a zennial. Like I had this analog childhood and now I'm in this digital kind of late teens, early adult life. And I think technology is great, but it's put a barrier with real human connection. And don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing technology at all. I mean, it's how I'm managing to talk to you today. And it's how I've kept in contact with all my family and friends back in Scotland. But being a migrant and not having natural community here, then becoming a single mum on top of that, it has been quite isolating. And I hadn't realized how isolated I had become until I really thought about it. And I was like, I need to improve my community as well. So, um, that's been another factor in my healing. It's been looking at my diet. It's been looking at my connections in my life. It's been looking at the movement that I'm doing. And these are all things that we fundamentally need for well-being. And yes, we need medical advice as well. But there's stuff that we can do ourselves that are within our control. And you just have to go seek out the right people to help you with those things. Obviously, I've been studying my psychology degree at the same time. So I've been kind of psychoanalyzing myself, which has been interesting. But it's been, I don't know how to describe it. It's just been a real learning curve, a real opportunity for growth as well, because I feel like I'm a very different person to when I started the podcast 5 years ago. Um, I'm now in my wisdom years, of course, because I'm in menopause, and I do feel like I I have got some wisdom to share with people, and I'm a huge advocate for lifestyle medicine and for holistic healthcare.
And I think this is important to talk about too, because how many people do we know, or even that are listening that we don't know, that would say they feel lonely or they feel they don't have people they can turn to in a crisis. And they don't need to be a migrant like yourself. They could just be, I mean, I live in a separate state from any of my family, or you could just not be close to them. Like there's so many ways that we can end up feeling very alone, and it does come back to that very, very true saying, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your relationships. And you don't need to have a shitload of people for it to be quality. I like to think of it as I've got my beautiful fiance, but then I've got my Spice Girls. I've got 5 really close girlfriends that I can call up or will be there if I needed them. And that's really important. And I also really like what you were saying about technology is a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, you and I wouldn't be sitting here talking today if we didn't have it. But I don't know if you've heard of the term ambiguous loss that Esther Perel talks about.
Yes, I
I
have.
feel like that's an important piece because technology allows us to stay connected, but it can also create that disconnect with those that we're on the couch with or in the same room with if we're not really emotionally present. And then even the opposite, we can experience ambiguous loss with, you and I are on opposite ends of the country and we might be emotionally connected, but we're physically apart. So there's lots and lots of ways that can impact you. And so maybe checking in, who do you need to connect with and how frequently, and when do you need to see them physically? Because it makes a huge difference on your overall well-being, not just emotionally, but physically as well.
Yeah, that connection is it's so powerful, and I'm really grateful to work in a really great team. We've got a great culture. Everyone's been so supportive of me through all this, and I've known they've got my back and that I can ask them and call on them if I need to. And then I've got my close connections, like locally as well, with my friends. And like I said back at the start, I've spent a lot of time nurturing that relationship with my kids because I've realised how important that is as well. Having lost my mum when I was 18, I I really want to have that powerful connection with my two boys. Um, so yeah, it's been a real kind of life lesson, the whole experience. But I feel like I've managed to pull my nursing knowledge together with my positive psychology and mindfulness knowledge and use it all to my advantage. And then I've sought out professionals who can help me both medical and alternative or semi alternative to get me on the path to wellness again. And as I continue to navigate this journey, I will continue to do so. Um, I do still take 4 antihistamines a day, which is a huge amount of antihistamines, but I need to, and that's just a fact of life. So I'm still taking Western medicine as well. I'm not going completely holistic, but I'm a big fan for blending the two together. I think they can work really well together. But there seems to be at times, and I'm not saying this isn't a general sweeping statement, but they can kind of be like, oh, I'm better than the other. I think there's such a beautiful opportunity for the two to work well together.
Absolutely.
Um, and yeah, have that
And
holistic
I think
approach.
that's an important piece, which I think we've both sort of alluded to today. It's like you don't have to have just one or the other. Both have so many empowering and important ways in which they can support. So why would you only limit yourself to one? Why not have both?
Exactly. But it's seeking out the right support. I mean, your health is your wealth, like I've said already a couple of times. We need to be making sure we are getting our knowledge and being educated from the right sources who have the credentials to be able to give you the
Exactly.
advice.
And that's such a powerful reminder because, like Elaina said, the last few weeks in particular, I've had, clients showing me whether it's influencers or just even people's friends that are posting things on social media, and maybe they have good intention, but if they have no qualifications on or skills, whether it's in health, mental health, trauma, relationships, whatever the case might be, if they're not qualified, please discern very carefully whose advice you take on, whether it's for your life or your health. You want to make sure it's from someone who's actually not just qualified, but experienced in that field. So, yeah, don't just go Dr. Googling or Instagram scrolling because you'll end up getting some very poor guidance.
So, yeah, it's just about if you are going to go down that path and look at the holistic approach, just, yeah, don't be scared to ask people what their experience is, where they got their qualifications from, because anyone who's worth their salt will be happy to tell you. Well, that was another very interesting conversation, Michelle. Thank you. I feel like I did a lot of talking there. But yeah, I just wanted to share with you all because I think it's important to be transparent about where I've been and why I've been away. And um, I just wanted to share my health journey with you all because it's been a journey. And I know as nurses, we just try to keep pushing through and pushing through. and sometimes it's to our own detriment. I initially really struggled with this diagnosis of mast cell activation syndrome, and I was really scared, to eat at one point. But I had to get my mindset right so that I could really get on with my life and look at what I could control and adapt to that kind of lifestyle medicine principles and really look at my exercise, my diet, my community, and yeah, get back my sense of health and wealth again, because really health is everything. If we don't have our health, then yeah, everything else is impacted. So yeah, thank you for listening, everyone. Michelle, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. And thank you for being there for me over the last 4 or 5 years while I've been navigating all this. You have been that pillar of support and strength that I've needed at times. And I'm very grateful to have you in my life. Okay, everyone. That's a wrap for today's episode. We'll catch you all again soon. And always remember to offer yourself the same compassion you so freely give to others. Thank you for listening to the Happy Nurse podcast. If you've enjoyed today's content and would like to join the Happy Nurse community, head over to Facebook and check out the Happy Nurse AU Facebook page and request to join the Happy Nurse community. Also, check out happynurse.com.au for access to free downloads and subscription to my blog. See you soon, and in the meantime, remember to always offer yourself the same compassion that you so freely give to others.